Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Melanie Dean. I'm a psychologist, a scientist, and a Hay House author of the book, The Hidden Power of Emotions. And you're listening to the Wave Maker podcast, where we explore how your emotions are real energy waves that are more powerful than you think. And so are you. When you learn how to tap the power of your emotions, you can attract everything in life that you want. It's not just positive thinking, it's science, and I will show you how. Hello, I'm Dr. Melanie Dean. And today I would like to talk about what is the difference between being overwhelmed and being stressed, which one's better for you, and which should you be aspiring for as you navigate the challenges of life. So being overwhelmed, it might be better to really think about the word overwhelmed or feeling overwhelmed as overloaded, because really that's what we're talking about. When you are overwhelmed on an everyday basis in your life, that you have events happen that you have a myriad of feelings about, which we all do when negative events happen, challenging events happen. And if you have not had time to be able to really be present for those feelings, deal with them, and have them move through you where you are then being able to choose your response, if that is a challenge on an everyday basis and you kind of are overwhelmed and overloaded, you've reached your capacity and you can't end up with one more thing before you feel like you're going to flip your switch, that you cannot handle anymore. And we've all had those times where life seems to throw a lot at us at once and we are like, oh, I cannot handle one more thing. So I would make a case, and my definition of being overwhelmed is when you are on a perpetual state, a habitual state. It is a habit of having a lot happening in your life and not having time to clear and have a capacity to deal with the next stressor that may come. So you have reached your full load capacity. You're at kind of a breaking point. Now, if you are stressed, and you have kept your ability to flow with the difficulties of life and deal with the emotions and the solutions and move through the difficulties of life, you have capacity then to deal with new challenges and new difficulties, which we will call stressors, and you are stressed because when challenges come to you, you are stressed. So the difference is, are you having capacity to deal with those new challenges and those new difficulties, to deal with those stressors when you are stressed and move through them? Or are you already overloaded and overwhelmed on a habitual basis, and one more thing is too much? And what happens when it's too much? You shut off. You reach a breaking point where something has to give. That is a shut off. What gives is either a shut off to yourself. You have to shut down the emotions. You have to shut down a part of yourself because you don't feel capable of coping, so you just shut it off. Or you have to shut down the other person, the situation. You cannot be fully present for the other person or the situation. Something has to give. And if you are have full capacity, overloaded, and you cannot deal with anything more, you may shut down both. It's much like if you think about the analogy of the electricity that comes into your house. It comes in through a conduit of electricity and it comes through a breaker box. And if your breaker box, have you ever experienced where the electricity just shuts off in your house, a breaker has flipped its switch? Well, that happens when it's overloaded and there's too much current and it's reached its capacity, and so it flips off. And you have to then lower the juice going through that breaker, and you can turn it back on and everything should resume. So the question is, and if you think about being overloaded where you might be flipping the switch of your breaker box versus being stressed, but you have the capacity for that extra current of challenge and difficulty that's come into your life. You have the capacity to deal with that where it doesn't flip the switch of either turning you off or turning off to the situation or the relationship. Now, I remember it was years ago, just a kind of a funny way of thinking about this breaker box. It was also during a time when, if you've had raised kids and the kids are young and you're working, and there's a lot of challenges and can be very difficult during times with young kids and working, etc. So I remember we were living in a house. My family was living in a small cottage, charming cottage, but it was old, and the electricity in that cottage was very old when my kids were young. And we'd had one bathroom, and when it was wintertime and the heat was going and the lights were on and the kids were doing things that consumed electricity, and maybe you have, the oven going, and so there's a lot of demands on the electricity. Well, I would sometimes then take a few moments and shower and want to dry my hair, and I would plug that hair dryer into the outlet, and poof, the breaker would just flip, and then there's no current, and so frustrating. So just a little additional current of a hair dryer being plugged in was more capacity than the breaker in the breaker box of that small house, old house, could deal with. It just flipped the switch and shut off. So we are much like a breaker box with our emotional capacity and our emotional power to navigate life. So our goal is to have the capacity, the emotional room, the capacity to deal with the challenges and the difficulties that come to us regularly, and not have to have our breaker flip to off, where we have to shut off a part of ourselves, or we have to shut off the situation or the relationship or whatever is happening and just push it so far away that we're not dealing with it. So we don't want that outcome. We want the capacity to deal with the challenges. We want the emotional capacity, the emotional power, the emotional flow. Now, it's interesting that our breaker box, the electrical current that comes into our house, is electromagnetic energy. And if you have tuned into some of my previous podcasts or read my book, you will know that our emotions are also energy. They are on the spectrum of electromagnetic energy. They are a different higher vibration, more waves per hertz of electromagnetic energy than the electrical current flowing into your house. So the emotions that I say are electromagnetic energy are because whenever you have an emotion inside of yourself, your body creates molecules to match that emotion. You have heard of many of these molecules when you've heard of adrenaline, which your body is a molecule your body makes lots of when you are in a dangerous situation and your body's pumping a lot of adrenaline to get you through that situation. You may have heard of the molecule of oxytocin, which we tend to think of as the love molecule. You might have heard of serotonin or dopamine, and these are all molecules that flood into your brain that allow currents of well-being, the currents of electricity in your brain soak up these molecules, which activate which parts of your brain fire, whether they are neurons of well-being and happiness, or whether they are activating neurons of distress, stress, not well-being, perhaps even depression. So the emotions that you feel generate these molecules inside of yourself. And inside those molecules, there is 300 quadrillion waves per second of electromagnetic energy and quantum energy deep inside those molecules. So your emotions are real energy. They are just as real energy as the electrical current coming into your home in through the breaker box running the appliances in your home. Just as real, just happening at a very higher vibration, more waves per second. And you can't see this. Well, you can't see the electricity that's coming in your home either. So just to say, it is all very real. So your goal is to be able to manage this current of emotions that are coming through you with events that are happening in your life, to be able to have capacity. So you are creating emotional capacity within yourself. That's the goal, to have a broad opening of emotional capacity within yourself to deal with life challenges and stressors, rather than being maxed out on what it is that emotionally sends you so close to the breaking point that you have to have a shut off. You know, your breaker shuts it down, either to yourself or to others. So we are going to now look at, how do you create emotional capacity? The main way is to stay current with your emotional current. So the emotional current is all the feelings that come in and through you as a result of what's happening in your life. So staying current with that, being current with your current. Now, how do you do that? To be current with your emotional current is in your everyday quiet time to do these 4 things. So have some quiet time with yourself every day in which you do these 4 things, and you will notice that you don't need a lot of that. You just need a little bit of it, but it's an important little bit of your day in order to stay current with your emotional current. So in your quiet time every day, number 1 is to be with your feelings. Be present with your feelings. Wow. Notice them, feel them, allow yourself to know whatever feelings and feel the feelings for a short bit of time that are present for you with whatever event is happening. So if they are challenging feelings of grief, of sadness, or anger, or resentment, whatever has happened that has brought up a flood of feelings, be present with those feelings. You already know that when you're not present and you don't allow those feelings to really, if you're not aware of them, you're not allowing yourself to feel them, they have their own way of coming out in other ways, and you are not staying current. They build up, and then you end up with overload. So part of the creating the capacity, your emotional power capacity, is in staying current with those feelings, acknowledging them. So that's step 1 in your quiet time, is to be with them. If you do a little bit of this every day, you will no longer be afraid of them. The fear that you might have that you're going to get overwhelmed with those feelings is a valid fear when you are already overwhelmed and you are reaching your capacity. So if that is the case, if you are already up here at your capacity and you say, oh, I don't know about this, that's going to send me over the top and I'm going to have to flip off, well, you are already probably have been having a flip off of that switch to yourself or to others. So in this case, just say, I'm aware this is happening, and I'm going to choose perhaps to flip off the part to others or the situation so that I can be present with myself. So you are going to ask yourself to do what feels hard in the moment, which is to be present with those feelings. Set a timer. That's a great way to not flip your switch to yourself. when you set a timer, say for 1 minute, then you can say, I can tolerate 1 minute of these feelings, and you can. And that way then you will notice at the end of that 1 minute, you have a little more capacity in there. There's a little more emotional capacity to deal with life. Now, don't take that overboard because you're going to do a little bit of this every day until you can feel a decrease of that overwhelmed feeling, that overloaded feeling. And you will also notice that you no longer have to fully shut off yourself or fully shut off the situation. You will notice, just as you are allowing yourself to be real and honest with what emotions are present for you each day, that your capacity to deal with those, own those, feel them, and be with them grows a little bit every day. And you don't have to shut off as much to yourself or to others. You are creating that capacity within yourself. So step 2 in creating the capacity within yourself. So step 1 was being present for your feelings, really knowing what they are and feeling them. Step 2 is to own your part. Be honest with yourself about what part you have played in the situation, if any. So when you own your part and whether you've created a situation and been part of a situation that has happened, own whether you need to make amends, whether you need to correct something that you've done, or whether you needed to make a decision about how to do things differently in the future. So that's part of owning your part. So that's step 2. Step 3, and you'll notice that these go rather quickly once you get used to doing them. Step 3 is to acknowledge what you've done well. Acknowledge the role you've played that also has been positive, that you're happy with yourself about that. So to really own what you've brought to the situation that's a part of you that you like. Own that. So that's step 3. And the 4th step in creating your capacity, the 4th step is to just settle in and feel grateful. Feel grateful for whatever is happening in your life or the people in your life that make your life full and well and you feel grateful for. You will notice that this combination of being present with your feelings, owning your part in whatever is going on, figuring out whether you're going to do things differently in the future, whether you're going to make some amends, feeling good about yourself and the aspects of yourself that you have brought into the situation, because you have brought in positive aspects to yourself, to the situation, or you would not have the relationships you would not have the work you have, you would not have the friendships you have. So there's a part of you that has brought in good things, and acknowledge that. And then when you feel grateful for anything in your life that brings a joy to your heart and makes you happy, that just creates more capacity within you. It creates more well-being and more happiness. So those are your 4 steps in creating emotional capacity within yourself. So now I would like to just kind of walk through some examples and see how that plays out. I might be like many of you in that I am very sensitive to criticism. It could be minor criticism, major criticism, but it hurts. It hurts, and then I go down this rabbit hole of emotions and thoughts of feeling like a terrible, horrible person and feeling very badly about myself. And it could be a criticism that is not very valid for me, or it could be one that is valid. Oh, like I remember going to a party and there was a friend of mine and we were yucking it up and we got loud and we were laughing and guffawing, and later I heard that the woman whose house we were at thought that was a little bit much. And so I felt like I'm too loud, I'm insensitive, and so I went down that rabbit hole of negative thoughts about myself. I remember being in a situation in which really I was not aware and I was too loud, and I really should have been more aware that that was not appropriate for that situation. So I felt criticized, and then I went down that same rabbit hole of just telling myself all kinds of negative things about myself, and then getting to a very yucky place. I have in the past said things that hurt people's feelings, and I wish I would have said them in a little different way that didn't hurt somebody's feelings. So again, the criticism took me down a rabbit hole. Now, we all have emotional power patterns, And in some areas of our lives, we hold our power well, we deal with our emotions well in those areas of our lives. And in other areas of our lives, we don't. We reach emotional capacity, and it's very difficult for us, and we leak our power in those areas. So for example, I'm very strong and good at holding my emotional power in situations of financial abundance. I'm a good business person. I'm also great with my health, and I hold my power well there. I gather information. I think about things. I really have confidence in my ability to sort through a myriad of details and figure out options for how to proceed. And then I take all that information into my quiet time and feel clarity and confidence on the best way to proceed. So I hold my emotional power and use my emotional power, and my patterns of using my emotional power are strong in those two areas of my life. With relationships, not so much so. I am very sensitive to criticism and blame, and I go down a rabbit hole of negative self-talk that kicks in automatically. Now, we all have things that kick in automatically for us because our emotional patterns are a result of both our personality and our upbringing and our environment. And we go into automatic pilot mode on some of these patterns where it can take us to feeling stuck and unhappy and depressed and anxious and worried. And they kick in automatically. So your challenge, all of our challenges, is to be aware of where we are using our emotional power well, and we have lots of capacity to deal with things that happen in our life, and where we are actually leaking a lot of our emotional capacity because we get clogged up with old negative patterns that don't work well for us. So my sensitivity to criticism is an old negative pattern that doesn't work well for me. And my ability to create capacity in my life to handle criticism is through awareness and using the 4 steps that I outlined just a little bit ago. So when, for example, the party and I'm allowed, and the friend's house thought that was a little bit too much. Now, I didn't feel like I needed to make amends. So in step 1, I felt my feelings. I could feel that twinge of all of the negative thoughts and emotions come forward. And I had long ago created a list of those common thoughts and feelings that come forward for me when I am criticized or blamed. It's a pretty consistent, reliable list that I can count. All those negative thoughts are going to come at me, and all those negative feelings are going to come at me, because this pattern is old. I can trace it back to my upbringing. I can trace it back to my fear that I'm going to lose the relationship, that somehow I'm going to be rejected and the relationship's going to go away. So I can trace it back to all that. I know that pattern is an automatic pattern that just kicks in. So my capacity to move through that when it happens is in the awareness. So in this situation with the party where I was over the top, I'm aware that I'm kicking in with all those thoughts and feelings. And then I thought, okay, just remember, Melanie, yeah, there's that one. You feel like you're terrible, horrible, no good, very bad person. And is that really true? It is not really true. I'm not a horrible, terrible, no good, very bad person. So I saw the checklist I just ticked through, which allowed me to not personalize it so much, not take it such to a deep, fearful, negative place within myself. So that was step 1, to be present to the emotions that I was having. Step 2 was to be mindful of my role in it. Did I need to make amends? Do I need to do something different in the future? With the party, I didn't feel like I needed to make amends, but I was aware that when I go to her home in the future, I'm going to be aware not to be quite so loud and boisterous. In the situation where I was at a setting where I really should have been more aware and my loudness was a little disturbing, I did make amends. I did apologize, and I said, I'm sorry that I was really not being present and aware of as I should have been, and I was too loud, and it was disruptive. And I apologized, and I made a commitment to myself to be more aware in the future and do that differently in the future. I have made amends when I have hurt somebody's feelings and I didn't intend to. I apologized, and then I also became aware of how important it is for me to just slow down for a second before I talk so that I can choose my words more carefully. So that was my step 2. What is my role? My step 3 was in allowing myself to know, I have strong relationships. None of these relationships are going to go away because I said or did something that wasn't great. I'm not going to lose my relationships. I'm not going to lose my friendships. I have enough ability and have enough good, solid friendships, and I bring enough joy and fun to our relationships that I'm not going to lose those relationships. So that was good to know, to just bring, and I feel good about myself for being able to have created relationships and friendships that work well for me in that way. And step 4 was just my gratitude in the numerous friendships and situations and family that I have that brings me joy and opportunities for being loud and having fun. So those were my steps, and being aware of my emotional pattern that tends to kick in with a lot of negativity when I am criticized and blamed, and just being aware of that pattern. I don't have that pattern in other areas of my life, but I do have it in that area, and it's important just to be aware. You can serve yourself well by getting to know yourself that way. Now, here's another example. Recently, I was with a friend of mine, and we were together in the afternoon, and she said, my day's just been ruined. I just feel like the whole day is ruined. And she was explaining what had happened, that she had just found out that day that her ex-spouse had yet again said negative things to their children about her. Her ex-spouse was trying to essentially poison the relationship between her and her kids. And that was so upsetting to her, as you can imagine. She was full of anger and resentment and bitterness and sadness, and so she had all of that going on. So I let her talk. She talked, she vented, and after she was present with her feelings and really talking about them and owning them and being present with her feelings, she did take a deep breath and she calmed down, and we were just silent for a little bit. I could feel her being calmer. And I asked her, well, has that actually worked? Has your ex-spouse been able to poison your relationship with your children? Has that worked? And she looked at me and she smiled and she said, no, it hasn't worked. She said, my kids they want time with me. They seek time with me. We have a good relationship, and the relationship hasn't gotten worse because of that. It hasn't worked. So my relationship with my children is strong. Well, in that moment, she could own that she has created a relationship of strength with her children. She could also own that she's different from her ex-spouse. She doesn't want to put out poisonous, negative thoughts. She is not that. She could just say, I'm different than my ex-spouse. And she could let go of the anger and resentment, just saying, we are very different. We do not share the same value in how to navigate life. She's speaking about herself, am not going to go down that road of being negative and poisonous, trying to damage the relationship. So we all have the capacity to create room within ourselves to emotionally navigate difficulties and challenges. So if step one of the 4 steps, which is to feel your feelings and be present for your feelings in creating this capacity within you, if step one feels very difficult because you are already at the top, you are already on an everyday basis, overloaded and at that breaking point, then you already are familiar with a part of yourself that has had to shut down, and you're already familiar with ways in which you've shut down the situation or other people or relationships because you haven't had the capacity. So let yourself know that that's already been happening. And now, as you're going to choose a different way to create more capacity within yourself for feeling happy and content and being able to navigate life, just know you're probably still going to be doing some shut off of the relationship or the situation in order for you to choose to feel the feelings in the moment, even for a short bit of time. So be present in your quiet time, just a little bit of quiet time every day. Perhaps set a timer. If you're already overloaded and the thought of dealing with a lot of uncomfortable emotions feels way too much, set a timer and know that you will be increasing your ability to deal with those emotions as you do it. So each time you give yourself a little bit of time with difficult emotions, you will notice you automatically are creating additional capacity. And as you then finish the timer for that little snippet of feeling those emotions, you will go through the rest of the steps. Those are important in that you're going to just say, okay, did I have a role in that? Now, you may not be able to really address that fully because you're on overload, right? So give yourself permission that may take a few days of short bits of time each day, a few days where you can feel the capacity for step number 2, which is to, own your role in it. The step number 3, you can do, and it's important to do step number 3 and step number 4. Absolutely, which is acknowledge and feel good about the qualities within yourself that you contribute to other people and to situations, and for yourself, ways you take care of yourself. Feel good about that, those qualities within yourself. You can do that because you have many of them. We all do. And 4, you can do number 4, and it's essential you do number 4, which is to feel grateful for yourself, for others in your life, for situations, for the environment, for what is working in your life that brings a smile to your face. And you will notice that automatically creates more emotional capacity within yourself. So your ability to manage the stressors in your life and feel stressed, because that's natural when challenges and difficulties come to you, your ability to navigate and manage that with the capacity to deal with it. So you can be stressed and not overloaded, to make sure that you're not on an everyday overwhelmed, overloaded basis where you have to flip off part of yourself or switch off the relationship with others. So these are your ways to create the emotional capacity that creates a foundation for contentment, for happiness, for joy, that even as the difficulties and the challenges come to you and you feel stressed, you know you can navigate those. And the core foundation within you of happiness and contentment and peacefulness does not leave you, even when you are stressed and dealing with the challenges. So I ask you to pay attention to your emotional capacity. Know you have some emotional power patterns that might leak your power, and you have other patterns that are strong and working well for you. So here's to your awareness about all of that within you, to shifting into your more powerful emotions during your quiet time, and using those to help you navigate, and living a most powerful life. That's all for today's Wavemaker podcast. Thank you for listening. I have so much more to share with you, so be sure to tune in next month. And remember, go to my website, www.melaniedean.com, and join our free Wavemaker community, where you will receive even more science-backed advice for unlocking your emotional power.